Bravo has spent 20 years selling us one fantasy: rich, fabulous women living their best lives. Designer bags, private jets, $20,000 dinner parties. But behind the confessionals, taglines, and table flips, there's a completely different story. A story of fake loan applications, stolen settlement money, elderly victims robbed of their life savings, and one of the biggest legal scandals in the history of American television. This is the Bravo Fraud Iceberg. Teresa and Joe Giudice of The Real Housewives of New Jersey. We start with the one that put Bravo fraud on the map. Teresa and Joe Giudice were indicted on 39 federal counts in 2013. The charges included conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud, bankruptcy fraud, and tax evasion. The scheme was breathtaking in its audacity. The Giudices used fake pay stubs, fabricated tax returns, and forged W-2s to secure nearly $5 million in loans. They then tried to hide their assets when filing for bankruptcy, concealing Teresa's income from the TV show itself, her cookbook deals, and personal appearance fees. Joe separately earned nearly $1 million in income over 4 years and never filed a single tax return. And here's the deal that makes it so Bravo. In the first season of Real Housewives of New Jersey, the Giudices were filmed paying $120,000 worth of furniture in cash. That moment aired on national television and apparently raised 0 flags at the network. What makes this even more notable is that the Giudices' financial problems were not hidden even before that. They had filed for bankruptcy in 2009, before Real Housewives of New Jersey Season 2 even aired. Court documents were public, and their mounting debts were fully documented. Bravo cast them anyway, keeping them on through the fraud investigation, through the indictment, through the guilty plea, and resumed filming the moment Teresa was released from prison. Teresa served 15 months in federal prison, Joe served 41 months and was subsequently deported to Italy. The couple was ordered to forfeit nearly $500,000. There's a reasonable argument that Bravo profited directly from a fraud story that they had every reason to see coming. The legal issues were technically their personal business, but the legal issues were also the drama that drove ratings. And obviously, Teresa's still on the show. So second up, we have Jen Shah, the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. If Teresa Giudice were the original Bravo fraud scandal, Jen Shah might be the darkest. Shah didn't just commit fraud to fund her own lifestyle. She ran a nationwide telemarketing scheme that specifically targeted elderly and vulnerable people, defrauding thousands of victims out of their life savings with promises of fake business opportunities that had, in the words of prosecutors, little or no value. The scheme ran for nearly a decade, from 2012 all the way to 2021, while Shah was simultaneously building a Bravo persona around outrageous wealth. 8 assistants to just get her ready for a party. The self-styled Shah Squad, lavish parties, designer everything. A lifestyle that screams success. That lifestyle was funded, at least partially, by her victims. The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City premiered in 2020. That means for at least 1 full year, Shah was simultaneously defrauding elderly victims and appearing on national television flaunting the proceeds. Some of her victims almost certainly watched the show. They had been sold fake business opportunities by Shah's operation and left with nothing, while watching her throw parties on Bravo funded in part by their money. She was arrested in dramatic fashion during a cast trip in Utah in 2021, in front of her castmates. She initially claimed she was innocent and planned to fight the charges. Then she pleaded guilty. She was sentenced to 78 months in federal prison and ordered to forfeit $6.5 million, pay $6.6 million in restitution, and surrender 30 luxury items and 78 counterfeit luxury goods. Before delivering the sentence, the judge made a point of saying that Shah's Bravo persona was just a character. The person standing before him was someone who had spent years stealing from the elderly. Next, we have Tom Girardi and Erika Jayne, the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. This is one that should have ended their careers and almost did. Tom Girardi was one of the most celebrated plaintiff attorneys in California history. He spent decades winning massive settlements for ordinary people against corporations. He was a real-life inspiration behind Eric Brockovich. He was revered by the legal community and beloved by his clients, regular people who trusted him with the worst moments of their lives. His wife, Erika Jayne Girardi, joined Real Housewives of Beverly Hills in 2015. She was known for her glamorous alter ego, Erika Jayne. Pop star persona, private jets, and a glam squad that she later testified in divorce proceedings cost approximately $40,000 a month, $480,000 a year just for getting ready. In November 2020, Erika filed for divorce. Weeks later came the revelation that changed everything. Tom Girardi had been embezzling settlement funds from his own clients, not corporate clients, regular people who had suffered real tragedies and trusted him with their cases, including the families and victims who died in the 2018 Lion Air Flight 610 crash, a Boeing 737 MAX that went down, killing all 189 people on board. Those families had won settlements, and the money was sitting in Tom Girardi's trust account. He stole it to fund his and Erika's lifestyle. Girardi's law firm was forced into bankruptcy. He was diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's disease and placed under a conservatorship. He was later tried and found guilty on 4 counts of wire fraud. He was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $2.3 million in restitution. The question that haunted Real Housewives of Beverly Hills for multiple seasons was how much Erika knew. She denied any knowledge of the embezzlement. She was named in multiple lawsuits. The suits were eventually settled, and she was never criminally charged. But consider this. The $40,000 monthly glam squad, the private jets, the Erika Jayne performance costs, all of it run through Tom Girardi's firm. All of it, at least in part, funded by client settlement money that belonged to people like families of Lion Air victims, who were waiting for money that had already been won on their behalf. Next, we have Sonja Morgan, the Real Housewives of New York. This one is less criminal fraud and more a masterclass in financial chaos, but it belongs in the iceberg because of how perfectly it captures the Bravo dynamic. Sonja Morgan joined Real Housewives of New York City in season 3. She arrived presenting herself as a Manhattan socialite with her Upper East Side townhouse, European chateau, charity galas, the works. Old money energy, former wife of John Adams Morgan, heir to the JP Morgan banking fortune. Just months after she joined the show, in November 2010, she filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, listing $19.8 million in debt against only $13.5 million in assets. The root of the problem was a failed movie. Sonja's production company had entered into agreement with Hannibal Pictures to produce a film called Fast Flash to Bang Time, starring John Travolta. The movie never got made. Hannibal sued. A California judge awarded them $7 million judgment against Sonja. With interest and administration fees, the total ballooned to over $9 million. The bankruptcy case dragged on for 5 years. Through multiple failed reorganization plans, a court-appointed trustee who took control of her finances, and a separate lawsuit from her own bankruptcy lawyers, who claimed she stiffed them on $66,000 in legal fees. Here's the detail that makes it a Bravo story. During those 5 years of bankruptcy proceedings, Sonja was simultaneously filming Real Housewives of New York, collecting a reported $465,000 a season, while presenting herself on camera as a glamorous socialite who threw elaborate dinner parties and ran multiple business ventures. She eventually settled the case in 2015, paying creditors 100 cents on the dollar. She sold her French chateau for $5.7 million and her Telluride home to help cover the debts. The John Travolta movie, for what it's worth, was never made, and Travolta has never publicly commented on it. So lastly, we have Todd and Julie Chrisley, from Chrisley Knows Best. It aired on USA Network, not Bravo, but it belongs in this iceberg because it's the purest distillation of the pattern. Todd and Julie Chrisley built an entire brand around financial success, family values, and Southern charm. The show ran for 9 seasons. They presented themselves as wealthy, put-together, God-fearing conservatives who had life figured out. The reality is that they had defrauded banks out of more than $30 million using false financial statements and fabricated documents. They submitted fake bank records to lenders, they evaded taxes, they lied consistently and systematically to maintain a lifestyle they couldn't legitimately afford. They were convicted in 2022. Todd was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison, Julie to 7 years. Their daughter, Savannah, who had appeared on the show herself, took over their podcast and social media presence to keep the family brand alive while her parents served time. The Chrisley brand, built entirely on a fraudulent premise, continued generating revenue even after the conviction. So this is the pattern for Bravo. It attracts people who need to appear wealthy. This is the systemic insight that ties the entire iceberg together, and the reason this isn't just a collection of individual scandals, but sort of a structural problem that Bravo has on their hands. Look at every major case we've covered. The Giudices, Jen Shah, the Girardis, the Chrisleys. The pattern's identical every time. There are people who desperately need to project a lifestyle they either didn't have or couldn't sustain legally. And Bravo, a network whose entire brand is aspirational wealth, provides the perfect platform for people to do that. A Real Housewives cast member who appears broke is useless to Bravo. A cast member who appears fabulously wealthy, regardless of how they actually got there, is gold. The network has direct financial incentive to cast people who project success, and people who are projecting fake success have a direct incentive to use national TV platform to legitimize themselves. The financial incentive structure of reality TV doesn't just attract fraud, it arguably rewards it. People willing to project a false image of wealth are more likely to get cast. People hiding financial crimes have every reason to use a TV platform to make themselves look legitimate. And once you're on the show, the network has every reason to keep you, because the drama of your legal problems is exactly what drives ratings. So Bravo didn't necessarily create this dynamic, but it also hasn't looked very hard to stop it. The Giudices' bankruptcy was public record before they filmed season 2. Jen Shah's business activities were suspicious enough that her own castmates had questions. Tom Girardi's firm had been facing bar complaints for years before the embezzlement became public. In every case, the questions were available to ask. And in every case, as long as the drama was good and the ratings held, nobody asked. Until the FBI showed up on a cast trip in Utah. The Bravo Fraud Iceberg has 3 tiers, but honestly, we've only scratched the surface. Teresa is still on Real Housewives of New Jersey. Erika Jayne is still on Beverly Hills. The network that hosted these scandals is still producing the same shows, casting the same type of people, selling the same fantasy. For example, Liz from Real Housewives of Rhode Island is embroiled in her own scandal right now with Dino, and we'll see what happens. The question isn't why these people ended up on Bravo. The question is why Bravo keeps ending up with these people and why we keep watching. That's a puzzle.